You're very welcome back. Now, our next guest has years of frontline medical experience and, as a parent herself, is deeply passionate about helping families access clear, calm and reliable medical advice.
I love when she gives that advice online. We're delighted to be joined by consultant paediatrician Dr. Niamh Lynch. Niamh, there will be people out there who are going to hug. You've got a book, because I know people are absolutely obsessed with you online, because you did start, you know, giving during the pandemic, and I just kind of going, okay, guys, you're all kind of freaking out and giving this amazing advice. And now you've got this book, Should I Be Worried? Which is, I'd say you're asked that 50 million times a day, are you?
Yeah. And it's something I asked myself, you know, in the early days when my kids were small. And back then, the books that were around were kind of austere and, you know, telling you what you should and shouldn't do. And it was a less friendly space for parents. So I just wanted something that felt more like a conversation.
Yeah, where you're one of the things that I like, poop. It's just about poo.
In a world of Google, though, where when I'm sure parents automatically see a symptom, something not too sure about, straight onto Google and the worst comes up. How important is it to have a book with reliable advice? Like,
very important.
Well, exactly. Is that why you decided to write it?
It was. You know, I suppose with the Instagram stuff, that's very impermanent. You know, it's just floating out there on the internet. At any point, it could all be deleted, you know, if Instagram shut down or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's nice to have something that's tangible, but also with the rise of AI, even when you Google something now, you get this AI summary at the top that is like, can be completely wrong or fear-inducing. So my sense was, if I had a book that was like a concrete thing that you hold in your hand, it can't be manipulated, it can't be altered, it's just the facts, checked and double-checked.
And it's just advice, you know, for parents who kind of, because it's a worrying time as a parent, and you go right through from newborn, right through to later years as well for children, because for parents, particularly for first-time parents, it's a scary time, and everything new, you're kind of question, should I be worried?
Absolutely. Like, newborns are so scary. You know what I mean? Like, in a nice way. They're very cute. But they're all, you know, they're still learning how to do everything, you know, so they're learning how to poo, how to pee. Everything is new for them. And if you're a first-time parent especially, it's totally new for you as well. So every little thing that they do that is normal can seem unusual. Like, you know, when they're asleep and they do all this strange grunting, you're kind of going, oh my God, is there something wrong? Have they a pain? So what I'm trying to do is sort of demystify that time and say, look, this is normal, a normal thing for your baby to do in sleep, or this is a normal thing to do when they feed, just so the parents can feel a bit reassured, but also then, this is not normal, this is when you need to get help. So the red flags are very, I hope, very empowering for parents, so that they can say, oh look, I'm spotting these patterns in my child, I need to go and get medical help now.
Because obviously every case is different, it's subjective, it's how someone reacts within the moment, but would there be something that you think people perhaps overreact about a lot?
To be fair, I don't think that parents ever overreact to things. You know, they can get very worried about things. Do you know what I mean? So tummy pain is a very good example. You know, tummy pain in kids is really, really common. And it's most of the time, it's not because of anything bad. So a child who is nervous or who has a bit of trapped wind or is a bit constipated might complain of a very, very bad pain in their tummy. But then when we examine them and when we do tests, we don't find anything serious. But parents can get really worried about that pain because they worry, you know, is this something serious? Could it be appendicitis? Could it be a urinary tract infection? So I suppose in the book I break that down, like, you know, what the signs are for something serious versus, you know, sort of normal childhood tummy pain and things like that.
And you go through different milestones, and you also go into the likes of vaccines, which is kind of one of these topics that if you go on social media and people go down minefields of not, and they're how important is it for people to read this and to trust the science on this? And you talk through about how the trusted sources and if you are hesitant and are maybe concerns about it, but actually the science is there. People like yourself have had to deal with this for years.
So it's very hard to emotively quantify lives that have not been lost.
Okay.
So over the years, obviously, vaccines have prevented millions
Huge.
of deaths.
Yeah.
So I suppose what I've done, I understand why parents have hesitancy now, because there is a lot of stuff out there about vaccines. And so in the book, what I do is I go through the diseases that they prevent, because we've forgotten what those diseases were like and what they do. Like, you know, my grandmother came from a family of 15 and 4 of those died of diphtheria. So, you know, like that's not that long ago. And if these diseases make a comeback, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do in the book was, you know, let parents feel like they are making an informed decision and just advise them about the diseases that the vaccine prevents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it's interesting. We were talking to a man from Texas yesterday where measles is spreading a huge amount there. When you're going through things like this, I'm assuming that for parents, worries change as a child grows, right?
Yeah.
They can probably, even if it's their first child, you can kind of get better at handling things. But an awful lot of the time, it is the GP is the first port of call.
Yeah.
And it's a system that has been, it's really busy now. It's hard to get appointments. It's like we were talking to a doctor whose, you know, dad couldn't retire in his 80s because there just wasn't another GP in the area. How do you think our system is working?
God, that's a very big question. I think it's working as best it can. I suppose let's put it that way. We do have a manpower and a woman power crisis across the board, especially in general practice. My brother is a GP, so they are doing their very best, but the system is straining because our population has increased.
Yeah.
And so we do have to put money into taking that into account and growing GP practices, for example, so that you get that frontline care, because the next stage then is if they can't get access to a GP, then they're going to present to the emergency department or the urgent care, and that clogs up the emergency department. So we need to get the primary bit right.
Yeah.
Before we move on then to the secondary and tertiary. So look, like everything, it needs more money. Everything does. But I think we do have to remember that our population is growing. Unlike a lot of parts of Europe, our population is getting bigger. So we have to invest in that infrastructure for people.
Is it important to having a resource like this as well? Like you mentioned, tummy pain there. At the minute, a lot of parents might panic and decide to have to go to A&E. Of course, this clogs up the system and things as well. Is that another reason why the book you felt is quite important?
Well, I hope it will help people
answer those questions.
Yeah, I hope it helps people. Now, I would still say if you're feeling very worried, obviously this isn't a replacement for medical advice, it's just information. But that it might, let's say if you've gone to the GP and the GP has said, I think this is recurrent abdominal pain of childhood, then you can go and read about that and make sense of it in your own head as to why your child might have gotten that diagnosis. So it's just to sort of reinforce what you've already been told maybe. Or, like I said, again, with the red flags, it's just like, you know, you're sitting at home with your child and they have, you know, a symptom and it's getting worse, not better. Look at the red flags and say, okay, actually, now it's time to go and get help.
I know. I'm looking at, there's all these resources here, like hand, foot, and mouth disease, and all like all the things that you're like that you've put in. Been there, done that. You're like all the things, which is very interesting. You've got red flags beside all this. Is in your career, like a consultant paediatrician, is there a question like, should I be worried about ... Is there a thing that people ask you the most about?
Well, in my line of work, I work in paediatric neurology, so I often get questions about development, you know, and sort of, is my child developing signs of maybe being neurodiverse or neurodivergent, and worrying about, say, delays in their speech or their walking or other parts of their development. So that's what I would get asked the most in my direct line of work, and because you know what, I'm a subspecialty within paediatrics, I get asked slightly different questions to what other people get asked about.
Are you worried about people or how it feels? And I know online can be a very different world from the real world. Are you worried about how people sometimes just don't believe in medicine and science anymore? I
am, yeah. So there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there, and I'm not really sure what the agenda is, why that's being pushed. It's sort of to shake people's faith in institutions and organisations and things like that. You know, we see what's happening across the Atlantic, and it you know, they say, what is it that America sneezes and Europe catches a cold kind of a thing. And that sort of stuff, it filters across the pond, you know, and you see it more and more here. Then you have the rise of sort of, you know, wellness influencers who say, you know, well, doctors won't tell you X, or I have a secret that, you know, science hasn't discovered yet. And it's kind of like, if you take a step back from it and logically analyse it, it doesn't really make much sense. But in the moment when you're watching someone on a screen who's very persuasive, then you can maybe buy into that and go down a rabbit hole. And then there's a sort of a pipeline then from, you know, wellness to conspiracy nearly, you know what I mean? So that's not to diss all wellness influencers, because some of them do great work. But there is a sort of a subsect there that can do damage really. And so, you know, you'd worry that parents would decide to do something alternative with their child rather than seeking the appropriate medical help.
Yeah, and we always talk about how important it is to advocate for yourself as well and what you think is going on. The book is called Should I Be Worried? A No Panic Guide to Your Child's Health. Dr. Niamh Lynch, thanks so much for coming in and chatting to us today.
Thank you.